even after family school, but what I loved, my daughters continued to dabble with the curriculum in various ways online, and the music, one of my daughters still uses those originally playlists that for years she would go back, and that was music that she listened to over and over. And I loved the flashcards. You know, they were like the geography ones were my favorite because I learned so. I felt like I was learning so much through all of it. My name's Marin Jones, and I have 6 kids as well. We have been homeschooling for about 6 years, I think, somewhere right around there. But I could pretty much just say ditto to everything they just said. I've had a lot of the same feelings. I think for us, jumping into it, when we started, my oldest was, I think, 13. And for me, the big draw was, first of all, that the gospel was part of it, because I loved that, to keep God in everything. So that was a huge draw. And then also just having that many kids, the idea of just the one room, schoolroom. Thank you. Yes, that, you know what I'm saying. That was a big draw too, because I just was overwhelmed with that idea of sitting down with every kid for every subject and all that. So I loved that part of it as well. But yeah, it's been great for our family. It's been a really good fit. We've kind of like what Andrew was saying, we've kind of dabbled a little bit. Like some years it's been super strong, family school is all we've done. There's been other years where some other things have come in, and so it just kind of changes every year, and you kind of have to adapt and be prayerful about that. So I don't know what's next.
So I think the idea when we talked to Peter is that we want this to be meaningful to you. So we thought we'd talk about the things that you guys want to talk about. Any thoughts, any questions, any highlights, any?
I have a question. I can talk really loud. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. People always say, oh, I'll talk loud, but it's like, no, I really do talk loud. So I've only been homeschooling for about a year and a half now, and sometimes I feel bogged down by all the outside pressures of people being like, you really want to do that? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And sometimes, I guess, with your older kids now, you've got kids, I mean, some of you have kids who are out of the house and whatever. I guess I'd love to know some of the biggest, like, joys that you got to experience as they grew out of the house, and the biggest advantages that you saw from doing homeschooling, you know what I mean, into their young adulthood and into, like, blossoming adolescence, you know, of where it really was beneficial for you and what you found that was the best thing that you did.
My kids are still young, so I'll be really brief, but I can already see that one of the best things that's coming out of it is the relationships that they're building among each other and with me, and that we can model Christian, loving relationships even when you're a teenager, you know, how to be a good friend. So I really like that. And I have a friend, Nanette Wiggins, on the 3rd generation of homeschooling, and I see her family, even her grown kids, right? Like, they're still friends, they're chatting, they're talking, and they're like, I don't know, 40 years old? So it's really neat. Here, Nanette, do you want to?
No, I was just going to say, I'll talk about too. I was just going to say that when my kids get into college, they all have to do a paper for their first English class at BYU or at UVU. And almost all of them have written the same paper differently, but they all want to write about socialization and homeschool. And I think homeschool is the most socializing thing
Amen.
that ever was. To see those kind of prepubescent boys just loving the little kids and carrying them around and being willing to sit down with them and have a lesson with them. It's so, the socialization in homeschooling it has been for our family just phenomenal. Our kids know all the same poems, they know all the same songs, they've memorized all the same scriptures. They, one of my grandkids the other day said, he scored like the highest at Provo High on his geography know the countries quiz. And I'm like, Carson, do you think that was like, did homeschool help you with that? Because our kids mostly have gone to public school starting in high school. And he said, absolutely, Grandma. It was all about homeschool and geography. So, and just to see them become adults and nurses and successful businessmen and doctors, and it's pretty exciting.
That's really good. So, also, my son, he graduated early at age 16. And he mostly did family school, and then we did other things. We homeschooled through high school. My 3 children, the thing that I love the best is that they are the best friends. They are really good friends. In the beginning, you're going to pull your hair out. They're going to be arguing. You're going to be like, I don't know how to parent my kids. I'm not used to them 24/7. Send them back. You know, you have your days where you go in your room, you kneel down, and you cry, and you ask Heavenly Father, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? You led me to this, my kids need it, but it's killing me. I can't do this. And I promise, the fighting calms down. They become the best of friends. They stand up for each other. When times get really tough, they're there for each other. And I mean, we've really had some storms hit our home and in life. And my kids were just talking about this the other day. The reason we're hanging in there is we have each other. And it's because of homeschooling. If we'd been in completely separate grades, going our separate ways, I mean, they still have all their separate interests in whether it's theater or sports or, you know, they're involved in lots of things in the community. And with the school, even though we've homeschooled, they have each other's backs. They're there for each other. And life skills, the colleges tell me when you do admissions, don't be afraid of it. Especially, I have a homemade school diploma for my kids, and I made their transcripts. And it's completely acceptable. You don't have to be accredited. Colleges hear you're a homeschooler, and most of them, if they've dealt with other homeschoolers, and a lot of the big colleges have, they'll tell you, those are the best students. We want those students. When COVID hit, or when they had to do online college, the homeschool kids know how to self-learn. They know how to be self-taught and go through the motions of just looking to the teachers as a mentor and getting through the hard courses. When my kids took driver's ed at the high school and she heard we were homeschoolers, she's like, oh good, they'll actually complete the online program for driver's ed this year. Because they're like, they know what to do. They just already have those habits down, and a part of homeschooling is teaching them to cook and do their own laundry, take care of themselves, a home, a garden, and they have all these life skills, and they all count as their electives in high school. Those are the same classes they take in high school, but they have real life learning at home. So there's just a lot of benefits. And the socialization, how do you deal with the people? I was trying to remember all your questions. So yeah, I was told by both my mother and my mother-in-law I was ruining their grandchildren. They were not going to grow up normal. My brother said, okay, yeah, you've got better academics, but when are you going to put them back in school finally so that they can get along and make friends? And I'm like, they have tons of friends. And I said, okay, let's compare them to other people we know in this family who've all been public schools and my kids, and take a good look. Like, tell me what normal is supposed to look like. What do you want my kids coming out of that high school door? How do you want them to act, socialize? They can get along with any kid or adult and hold a conversation. I'm not sure what you're looking at. And he's like, oh yeah, and his son was just laughing because his son went all through public school, and he's just laughing so hard that his dad was looking at my kids going, you need to send them back to school so they can learn social skills. And I'm like, my kids are really social. Where are they broken? And here's all the, show me how public school is the perfect form. Everyone walking out that door doesn't have issues or isn't a loner or depressed or, you know, there's all these things going on in every aspect of the world. You really can't define one or the other. Yes. Now that his youngest is at BYU Provo, my brother's coming around of what's going on in the world.
I love everything that's been said. I want to add being able to nurture that love of learning. I saw this especially in my oldest. He's just, you know, I had this list. Okay, well, if we're going to homeschool, we need to do this and this and this and this. This is what's important for us to learn. But he was more interested in origami, and that meant allowing my house to be scattered with origami creations for 6 or 7 months. And then all of a sudden it was clay creations, and he was creating all these magnificent things with clay. And that's kind of hard to do when you have to kind of let go of your expectations. But I look at him now, and he's gone through all of these phases of things he's learned, but he's learned them really well. And he's focused on what he's interested in. He went back to high school because he really wanted the social life that comes with that. But as a senior, we realized that really wasn't working. We pulled him out 3 months before he would have graduated. And his love of learning returns. He was finding those things that he was interested in again, spending all of his time in our garage welding and creating beautiful furniture. And it was so cool to see. So he's only been out of the house a year. He moved out like right after, because as the oldest of 6 kids, you really sometimes need a break from all of the siblings. So he's on his own, and it's been so rewarding. I honestly worried the most because he's been my hardest child, and I've worried about where he'd be. He had dyslexia and dysgraphia and some other learning challenges that made it hard. We didn't discover until he was in 9th grade, and I worried if he would be successful as an adult. And he's held a full-time job the last year. He's looking into the future. He's still continuing to learn things and has told me a few times, this is where the payoff comes, when he comes back and be like, yeah, Mom, I'm watching my friend who doesn't want to go to college, and her parents say this is the direction she needs to go. And I'm like, yeah, weren't you really lucky to have me and your dad as parents? And he's like, actually, I've realized that you two were the best parents that I could have had. And I'm like, oh, thank you. You know, that payoff will come eventually. If you're not feeling it right now, it does turn around as long as you continue trusting in the Lord and following the promptings that he gives you for your specific family.
I don't know if we all have to answer your question, but all of my youngest is 18, and so I homeschooled at various times, them, and some continuously, their whole education, some it was bits and pieces. I will say, I was listening to what is the definition of success, and I think what we can fall into is the trap of academic success versus what is our purpose in this life. And that's why I felt, as a mother, the most important thing that I wanted my children to know was the Savior. And if they come to know that, then that's success. Because that will lead them, all 4 of them, look very different on paper as far as what they have done academically. And they've all done different things spiritually. They've all had their own personal journey. But I know that this education was what was right for our family. And we've had elements of public, of private, of charter, of home. But all of that, the process that I think mattered the most to me was that they coming to own their own journey. You go to God and find what's right for you. And that's been very empowering for them to make or not make the right decisions in their life. And so for me, I don't know how successfully I could say they're going to this college or that college or whatever. At the end of the day, I hope they all return to God. Amen. I don't even have anything else to say. I think we covered it. Great.
Well, mine's really quick. I'm actually just curious who's in the room. Like, how many are prospective parents of using this program, experience?
How about you call it and we'll raise our hands? Prospective parent. Planning to homeschool. First year homeschool.
First year homeschool.
1 to 5 years homeschool. More than 10 years homeschool. Yeah, I think we're good.
Thanks.
Okay, so my biggest struggle has been trying to get over the expectation of getting all of their academics in and not allowing them to love learning and learn what they want to learn. So how do we get over that? Because I'll be more flexible and free, and we'll learn stuff, and they'll get really excited, and then I'll feel like, but we're falling behind. So we gotta catch up, and then I'll just be so stressed until I feel like we're catching up and we're getting all of the academic stuff that they need to do, but then they hate it. And then I feel like it's a fight. And so I'm like, but I can't make it fun all the time. because I don't have the energy to make it fun all the time. And so, I don't know, I guess I struggle so much with, going back to but they have to know this or people are going to think they're dumb. Or, and so and it's true.
Yeah.
Like, you feel judged as a parent.
Do you know success?
Oh my heck, all the time. And I was homeschooled growing up, and I had some real issues with that. Like, even now, if people ask me something, I would freeze because I was always asked, what's this, what's this, what's this? And I would just go,
Maybe you should start quizzing their public school.
But that's the point is how do you get over that? And I guess my fear is I don't have enough faith in the future that they will end up okay by just going this way and letting them do their interests. Like, how do you balance that? So I'm like, if I don't drill it all, then they're gonna not be successful, and it's gonna be my fault. But then if I just drill it all, then they're not gonna love it, and then it's gonna be my fault. So like, how do you?
It's all gonna be your fault, right?
It's always my fault. So like, what's your as a parent?
I think,
What's your experience?
so how long have you been homeschooling?
Oh, since my daughter's 11, since she was in kindergarten, so.
So a long time.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, for me it was, the first couple years I homeschooled, I definitely was trying to just duplicate public school at home, which is a horrible idea, don't do that. So you kind of just have to get to that point where you can just let go of that. It's like when you're saying fall behind what?
Behind what everyone's gonna be asking them.
Right, but that will be different depending on who's asking. So it's like to try to like keep up with like we're gonna fall behind what everyone else is gonna be like asking them if they know. Like that's an impossible thing to hold yourself to, I feel like. So you've got to recognize that first of all. So I think just kind of, it's hard, but trying to let go of that idea of you've got to do exactly what the public school is doing when they're doing it. Like, who decided we learn about Native Americans in 3rd grade? Or I don't even know what the thing is, but who decided that? Like, who got to decide that? And maybe that age isn't the right time for your kid to learn about that. And so you just kind of have to let go of that and maybe try to explain that to people who are questioning, but it can be hard. But I think that can be really freeing too, to just own it and be like, no, this is when we learned about this. It didn't need to be at this certain time when public school was doing it. And so I think just letting go of the whole idea of falling behind. There is no behind. You're never going to teach your kid everything, right? So I think it's like they were saying, fostering that love of learning so that they continue to learn throughout their life. Because I know, I look at myself now and I think, what do I even remember from when I was in public school? Like nothing. Like really, the basics. And so now, like as an adult, when you want to learn something, you know how to learn something. And so hopefully, I hope that my children will want to learn throughout their life, and that they'll keep that love of learning. So there really is no behind.
There's one thing in the schools across the country now. There are schools that are allowing kids to graduate who can't read and write. So if your kids can do that, it's already a
I think you're speaking for a lot of people. You're telling my story. This is what I worried about, and as I've watched my 2 oldest. So my second son is 17. He just turned 17, but he is really motivated to graduate this summer. And so he was behind in math for a lot of years. I didn't push it because there was always this conflict between us. And finally, he's like, okay, I need to know this to be able to graduate high school so I can get my diploma. And so he's motivated, and now he's learning it. And you can learn all that you need to learn in math in 6 weeks, they say. You know, there's a couple TED Talks out there that are really motivating for me that, you know, thinking that I'm not doing everything, he's learning what he needs to be able to move on to his next phase of life. And I think just letting go of those expectations and maybe coming up with a mantra that you say to people, like, this is my standard, this is what I'm going for, because that love of learning, helping them to desire that so that they can learn on their own.
So in homeschool, there's a great saying, the only behind is the one you sit on. There is no behind. And my kids hate the question. People, when they want to know how old they are, they'll say, what grade are you in? And they always look at me, what grade are we in? And people are like, why don't you know that question? Your kids don't know what the grade they're in? What are you teaching your kids at home? And it's like, well, we learn lots of things, and I used to actually tutor in the public schools, and I can tell you in any given grade class that every single child in that class is on track in one subject, behind in others, and ahead in others. That is the norm. There is no conveyor belt box package every child at 9 years old is at this level, and if they're not, they're either gifted or dumb. That's not true. Every child's ahead and behind, and so I look at people and I say, well, pick a subject and they'll tell you what grade they're in. They're very aware where their levels are. Ask any public schooler what level or what knowledge level they're at in something. They probably couldn't tell you. They just, oh, I'm in the 4th grade, yeah. So I go to school, I go to recess, my favorite's lunch. Right? So I prep my kids ahead of time for questions. And I'll just say, okay, we know people are usually going to ask you this, that they're on the 6s, you know, like, okay, 6 times 8, let's. If she asks me a question, well, I know what 6 times 8 is. I don't know. But I mean, I prep them like, okay, you're this age, you probably will be about this grade in general, and just answer that question and move on. And
it's just their age minus 5, right?
there you go.
Is the grade they're in. Like,
Yes. I didn't even realize that.
People are always asking, like, well, what grade are they in? You're like, they're 12, so
Yeah, and my kids, when they ask what grade, and they're like, yeah, they'll do that. I'm 12 years old. Well, what grade is that? And they're like, well, aren't you wanting to know? Oh, yeah, I just wanted to know how old you were. You have a comment way back there.
No, just the next one.
Oh, okay. So your question was about management of energy, knowledge, and definition of success, right? So if you look at the Harvard Institute for Child Development, they have a series on executive function skills, which is the skills you need to succeed in life. Inhibitory control, mental flexibility, working memory. So knowing what you're working on, being able to tell yourself no. So when I observe my children, I observe through that lens, like I were working on these things. The subjects that we work on are basically there to engage us, to enrich us. You know what I mean? So maybe this will help if I compare it to a plant, right? It all starts with a seed. The seed has information, which is basically doctrine, ideas. We can't see it, it's underground, right? The first thing that grows out of a seed is a root, right? The relationships, connection, so it doesn't blow out, right? So that's, I'll compare it later. But then you get the structure, right? The stalk or the trunk gives it structure. Then you get leaves. So what's the function of leaves? Capture energy, engagement, right? And then finally, when it all's working great, you get amazing fruit as a result. We are complex individuals, and like, let's see, what's her name? Dawn Hawkins was talking about, we need to engage the mind, the heart, the body, and align it all in relationships also to goodness and light, to be protected, to grow. So what does that mean? So when I analyze my homeschool, I want to make sure I have all those components, right? I want to teach the doctrine or the ideals, the principles. That's where the nutrition is gonna come to yield the great fruits at the end, right? From the soil and the rich soil. But that can only be done through relationships. The relationship that I have with them, the interactions. You mentioned planning amazing experiences for your kids. They probably love that and you all enjoy it and it's great. But like you said, it's probably not sustainable by itself. You need structure, right? To me, the structure is just how we develop habits and routines in our day, right? So we wake up and we do 5 things. And my kids come and give me a high five when they do it. Brush our hair, wash our face, change our clothes, you know, pick up my room, and eat breakfast. And then when they're done, they come to me and give me a high five. And then they tell me what they're going to do next. Now they don't tell me because they have a good habit. They log in and do their family school videos, and then they do their lesson. And so before lunch, our structure is that they do something for developing their thinking skills, which is math, logic, or something of that sort. And I have a few options that they can pick from, because agency is huge. I think I'm preaching to the choir, right? That's why we're doing this. We want them to be invested. We want them to make choices. And so they can pick, and they do one of that. They practice music. They're all doing 1 or 2 instruments, and they do something for writing. They can choose to write in their journal or do their writing book, which is The Good and the Beautiful. Or they might compose a story or do something else. But they know the structure that I'm saying is these expectations, right? And I tell them why. We all need to be good communicators as people. We need to be able to speak eloquently and write clearly
Even if you don't want to be a writer, you might need to write to your city or something, in your life, you need to be a good writer. So let's develop those. And we talk, so we do the actions of learning, but we try to give it a structure that can be understandable by them. And then we explain the why. What is the principle behind? Why are we doing this? And I think that's important, that's powerful. I mean, my home is not perfect. We're always improving our routines. So when we do field trips, park days, all that, I try to schedule it after lunch so that I can have consistency in our morning personal expectations, right? Or if my kid has this big project that he wants to do on the computer, like I have a kid who's doing something, he knows that I'm gonna ask him about these things. So he hurries through them, and sometimes he's done in an hour with all of them. So that, or he'll be like, Mom, quiz me on this and that. Now about math, there are things, because we live in a society, I do feel like we need to be conversant in many abilities and skills. One of them is multiplication facts. Another one might be, being able to read and write or whatever you think it is. I think university diploma, college degree is an important social token. So I want my kids to get a college degree. Will they actually use it? Maybe, maybe not. But I think, I'm not worried about them graduating from high school, but I do want them to graduate from college. And so that's all. What's the next question?
Can I just add one thing? Something that has brought me some peace of mind is, I don't know if you know the Thomas Jefferson education, levels of learning.
Right.
I feel like that might bring you some peace of mind knowing if, if they're not meeting certain people's expectations at a certain stage or a certain age. That's been helpful.
Yeah, so that talks about phases of human development and what is reasonable to expect at different ages, and also how to set good challenges, or this would be something good to work on. Like a 5-year-old could learn to make a sandwich, and that would be great for their intellectual development. Yes.
Another good resource is a book called Teaching from Rest by Sarah Mackenzie. So she's very religious. She's not
Teaching from Rest.
But the name is short off.
Amen. Great.
And about relationships, and we were talking before, hold on to your kids. It's one that talks a lot about relationships.
Sorry. I just wanted to know, how did you choose this program? I've only been doing homeschool for 1 year. So what drew you into this program? Why did you choose it?
I love it. I first chose it because of the strong academics. They put a lot of really capable people into a team to develop the lesson plans. And so they're really good. The academics are good. The resources are amazing. There's more in there than I feel like I can do in the time that I have. But I know that if I want a really good lesson or idea or engaging thing on a certain subject, I can look it up because they've already put a lot of thought into it. I love the connections to the gospel. And now what I'm really enjoying this last year and two is that they provided a structure that makes it easier for me. So my kids do their video lesson, then they get online and they talk to people, and so we all need to belong, right? We belong to God first, then to our family, then we need to expand our circle of belonging to people outside of our families, friends, family. And we have neighbors, but they don't homeschool. So what they get from the Power Hour lesson is that they get to see other kids that are basically like them. And it's pretty amazing to see this 14-year-old boy talk about how he loves Jesus Christ and his mom. And I just love that. Or some of the teachers for the high school, the middle school lessons really dig deep into principles. So I sit there and listen, and I engage with my kids, but it's just so much more relaxing that part of the day. And I know that they're getting something great. They do a literature book, there's always a literature thing they're working on. So it's been easy for me to just be like, oh, we're reading My Little Princess. Now we're reading about, Carry On, Mr. Bowditch. And they've just done so much research that every time we read those books, we're just like, yeah, that was amazing. That was a good read. So it's just a great support.
It was a combination of really well-written lessons that had activities. It was more than just reading it to them, reading a dialogue, but they had a lot of fun activities and videos and different things that would enrich the lessons that make it really great. But the main thing was when I came to realize and know that when you have a God-centered education, you put God back into every subject, that it brings meaning into your life. And they've actually proven through studies that kids learn 3 times faster when there's religion and God put back into their learning, and there's meaning that they can connect with, and there's a reason. Why do I have to learn this, Mom? But they see the bigger picture when you bring God back into it and you bring him back into the history. I remember in history, I thought it was so cool that I learned that Daniel in the Bible lived at the same time as Nephi. And that history, like we have these parallels of our Bible history, our Book of Mormon history, and then our secular history. And it was just so amazing to me to bring that all into one big picture and to have it all together. And you know what? My kids in seminary are so more prepared than the other kids. There's so much gospel learning that went on in school that they just really have a grasp on that. And then fast forward to high school, you're asking, where is it in high school? And our kids are all over the place. They've all had different experiences, different academic abilities. My daughter's dealt with some really hard things and fell into some deep depression. And that meaning, that connection with God is what's kept her going and helped her pull back out of it. And now she's functioning and doing well again. And my mind just went blank. But this morning there was a talk where they said how the suicide rates are down among active LDS children because they have that connection with God. They know the full life purpose. And so that to me has been the most meaningful thing, to use family school over the others.
I really liked how well-rounded it was, that all of the subjects overlapped and complemented each other. The resources are fantastic, but definitely that gospel perspective was key for me.
Ditto, ditto, ditto. I mean, really, it's hard. The role of being a mother and adding to it, being that full-time educator, and how do you balance your time? And so for me, it really was an answer that complemented. We have so many wonderful memories reading with my children. Okay, frankly, they'll elbow me a lot because sometimes you fall asleep, but the literature that they bring in, and just the way they form the lessons to be able to engage them in the learning and go deeper, then I have time to create every single area. And so I just appreciated like you said, the well-roundedness of all of it.
Yeah, just again, amen. I think the only quick thing I would add is I love that most of the lessons hit on all the different learning styles as well. So there's visual, audio, hands-on, all of that for all the lessons. So.
And each lesson has research, which is what you find in any textbook, and then research, you think through it, thank you, and then you relate it to you, and that's where it's powerful. And then you record it, which in my family has been pretty optional, but we've done some fabulous things from it. Thank you.
I really loved hearing you kind of talk about your day, like doing 5 things, high-fiving your schedule. I'd love to hear everyone else's basic structure of your homeschool day.
So I'm a person who hates structure, and my favorite thing about homeschooling was I did not have to anymore. I had 2 older kids that went through public school. I had a combined family. No more packing lunches, carpools, getting them out the door, doing the homework that the teacher told them to do that afternoon once they got home from school. Someone said, how do you give up your day? And I'm like, I don't give up my day. You just choose when you fight your battles with homeschool. I do mine in the morning. You do yours after school hours. My kids are off playing. But the structure, so I've had various structures. Now we're very structured. They're in high school. Not very structured, but we're a lot more structured. You have to be once you hit high school. But that's an excellent question. I actually just won my battle, stage 4 cancer. I homeschooled during cancer. It's possible. In fact, homeschool was a huge blessing. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done when I was fresh out of brain surgery, getting that tumor out of there, recovering, and my daughters were sitting around me, and my son was a little more advanced, so he was at home with dad doing more organized schooling, but my girls sat right next to me. They read with me. They told me about their lessons, what they were doing. I walked them through it, all while I'm laying on the couch. It was totally possible. Had I had to worry about finding someone to get them to school, back home from school, to their activities, different things, it would have drove me crazy. And people are like, of course you're going to send them back to school now that you're fighting cancer, right? And I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? I'm so glad I'm in the middle of this and know what I'm doing. But so I would have rest in the morning. I would read my scriptures, do journaling, and plan the rest of the school day. When my kids were younger, even before I knew I had cancer and I was just really sick. But my kids would wake up, they had their literature, they all had bookshelves in their room with their favorite books of grade school level. They would look through their books, they would play with their Legos, they would build, they would imagine, they'd go out in the garden, they'd study the bugs, they were studying nature. I didn't even realize we were unschoolers. I thought it was the most horrible term I'd ever heard, unschooler, who does that to their kid? But then I realized it's a real thing, and get your mind, okay, this is the hardest thing. It took me like 3 years to grasp this, especially 6 months, when they said, get out of the public school mindset. Stop thinking that you've got to sit at a desk in school for 6 hours a day. No, you don't. You're not waiting for all the kids to sit down, shut up, pull their books out, start the lesson, all the chaos, and then go off to recess, go off to lunch. You can get things done so much faster, so much easier. It's apples to oranges. I just tell people we learn differently. But basically, after lunch, we would read a story together, and then we'd have a little more organized going through math lessons. In family school, when we sat down together, that was actually after lunch. And I loved my mornings. I came to really treasure my mornings, so do my kids, because kids need creativity. They need a lack of structure. You need structure, but kids need a chance to be kids and to fill their own time with their own things, and don't do it with video. There was no electronics in the morning.
Yeah, we don't have screens.
Amen.
No screens. In fact, I can tell you a lot of studies how I have friends who are like, oh, my kindergartner loves anything that's video game style. What can you tell me what curriculums? Don't do it. They'll become ADHD style. They'll gain addiction, brain mindset. It rewires their brain to do all that learning. We call it desserts. If you've completed all these school tasks, then maybe a couple times a week you can play those fun learning style games on the computer. But you really want good old-fashioned, sit down with your kids, hands-on creating with paper and crayons and reading. And the best thing you can do is pull them in near you and read those literature stories with them, have those discussions with them. That's what's going to matter.
Let me just clarify.
I think
we do screens, we just limit it. Right. Just to not.
I think we're out of time. Okay. Okay.
We'll skip lunch.
A shout out to all the dads. You can do a lot for homeschooling too. We can talk about it another time.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
$1
you are where you need to be, and
Yeah?
they're ready for you.
Hey, awesome. I think that for you.
Yes.
Wait, I have it. Oh, it's you. Back in? Yeah.
Watching you on these lessons we do.
Thank
We
you.
did the lesson a few weeks ago on people walking, people.
Yeah.
Still talk about how cute you were dressed as his abuela.
Oh, I'm so
They love it when we do music because it is.
Yeah. The curriculum telling me that.
Thank you for everything you put into that, Tammy.
Tammy,
Yes.
and are you hearing me talk?
I am. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yes, how are you doing? I'm good, I'm so good. Oh, thank you. It's always, this is my son, Maren, who's on the panel. So I'm so glad. No. Oh my gosh, no. Did you see me try to sit down in my regular seat? I was like,
So this is a microphone.
hold on, I'm telling her, because when I walked up to said, thank you so much. I just remembered it. Will you tell me if it, I mean, are you here to say, oh, your mic's not on?
Bring it and you can
I was just asking. I'm glad you found it.
I didn't use anything.
I was so great at just one. Just no. Do you need three or two? They are recording. I know. I wasn't really on it, but okay. All right, that's good. That was for the panel that I was on.
So it's not like
Stealing this card.
Adjusting for, whatever.
thank you.
So what I did?
I have stuff for you.
Let's go there. Just 1 second.
Hi.
I took out the card that's almost empty, so it's all recording on number 2 now that you do the main one. No worries. So, and then I'm gonna bring these cards back once she copies them off. So.
Okay. Thank you.
I have. I wasn't your shirt.
Oh, thank you. They said we're blue and dark. Okay, so I have this blue.
I know, 1:30.
But I think they're the things are all set and recorded. Okay. Everything's set.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, I think we're going to get started. Just because we were supposed to start at 1:30 and we're a little bit cut on time, and I have some things I'd love to just share with you. So we'll get started, and I'm sure people will trickle in as we go. First thing is, how many of you have heard of or read the book, The Fourth Turning? You heard that before? Okay. I haven't read it, but there is a summary of it in this book. Have you read this one? Thomas Jefferson, Education for Teens. Okay. The part in here that I want to share is the part where he talks about the fourth turning is about the cycles of history.
And there are these 4 different cycles of history. If you look back through time, the authors, and you can see this example yourself, have said that there are specific cycles of history, which they call turnings, which there are, these cycles have different purposes and different patterns, but just like the seasons, one follows the other. So the first season is the founding, then awakening, unraveling, and crisis. And before I even explain, we're going to talk a little bit about what these are, but before I even explain what they are, can you just guess which cycle of history we're in right now? Crisis. Yeah. I don't even need to tell you. You know this yourself, but just because it will be helpful as we'll get to micro schools, we'll get there, but this is helpful to set us up. I'm just going to briefly explain what each of the cycles is. Okay, so the first one is founding. That's where new institutions, come on in, we just have to get started. New institutions are built up to solve the problems that happened during crisis. Remember, these are all cyclical in order. So things like, if you look at our past, the United Nations, Social Security, World Bank, those were institutions that came after a crisis to try and solve the problems and help society along. Second cycle, second turning is called the awakening. That's where the youth grow up and challenge the current or the old establishments. Things like the counterculture movement of the 60s, Woodstock, the civil rights movement, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, who led that. That's the awakening era. Third cycle is called the unraveling, and that is where 2 big viewpoints and political parties fight for power, and everything seems like it's coming apart, thus the unraveling. Economies boom. The last unraveling happened between 84 and 2001, and the one before that was in the 1920s. So then the crisis one, the one that we are in right now. This is where the big problems come. Actually, crisis season consists usually of 3 crises in a row, sometimes overlapping. First is a wake-up crisis that shocks everyone, like the Boston Tea Party, the election of Abraham Lincoln, or the 1929 stock market crash, which then started the Great Depression. And in recent times, it appears that 9/11 was probably that kind of event for us. So that's the first thing, to have some kind of a wake-up. Then the second thing is a major economic crisis. And then third, usually a major war, a pandemic, or a mixture of these or other calamitous events all at the same time. And the last several crisis seasons included the Revolutionary War and the subsequent Depression, the Civil War and Depression, the Great Depression, and World War II. So, we find ourselves right now here. But it's helpful to know a little bit about what happens here, and also within each of these different cycles or turnings of history, there are different rules for success. So let's just talk about those really quick. If we were growing up in the second or third seasons, then the ways that we succeed as a community, as a nation, are big institutions, professional careers, investments, credentials, resumes, and leisure and entertainment. Whereas in the first and fourth seasons, the way to success is strong family and community relations, entrepreneurial ability, initiative, and leadership skills. So, by knowing this, and by knowing which season we're in, we know what can help our society and how we can succeed at the stage that we're at. So we're in crisis, right? We're in the crisis season. And we know, let me see what comes next. Oh. We know that after crisis, we're going to get to that founding. So, if you came to this class, then you are probably one of those founders, or you are raising founders, because that is what's coming next. We need people who are ready to succeed in this session here by being able to build strong families and strong communities. So, you are needed. And if you have felt that pull to maybe start a school or to start some kind of gathering, maybe an impression, or just looking around at your family and thinking, my kids need something like that, then there's a reason, because the Lord is going to use you to help repair your communities and the families that you live in, to get us out of that crisis, to be that healing that is needed during that founding session, that founding season. And so I would just say, I think you guys are like modern day Esthers, that you were born for a time such as this in the history of the world and in the history of the Lord's kingdom. So let's talk about maybe some solutions for founding era. Okay? Some that were just talked about in that video were family education centers and micro schools. You probably are familiar with the term micro school. That's a common word around these days, but family education center might be a little bit different, or you may not be as familiar with that. So let's go ahead and talk about what these are, and then we'll see how they can be the answer for this crisis that we find ourselves in. Okay, so family education centers typically supports the whole family. Moms, they have something to offer for moms, dads, youth, children. The whole family typically attends together. It's intentionally small. 5 families, maybe 12 families, but a tight smallness so that we can have a tight community. And then frequency about maybe 1 to 2 times a week. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and currently we have a family education center where there are about 10 families. And the way we operate is we run by 6-week units. It's kind of like Come Follow Me, where we all study the same topics at home during the week, but mom decides the curriculum or how deep or which resources to use, and then we all come together and the kids share what they learned during the week, and they kind of teach each other in that process. Oh, well, we talked about clouds, and this is what I learned, and sometimes they'll bring in their art project that they made, or just it's way beyond show and tell, right? It's not just this little, and here's this I made, but they're actually teaching each other and sharing things that they were learning, and so it strengthens what they learned at home that week and enriches everyone else who's there. So that's the first part. Then the second part, we do activities together, learning activities together. And at the end of those 6 weeks, then we always do a celebration based on some of those unit themes that we had talked about. And we only meet 2 hours a week in a home. So just really quick, I'm going to show you some of the things that we've done. We had an art and music symposium, a family camp out, things that are tricky to do. Like at American Heritage say, we're going to have a family camp out. Which campground can hold that many people, right? By having an intentionally small community, you can do some things that you just can't in a larger place. We had a business fair, and we've just been studying the Hawaiian Islands, so we threw the luau in there. It doesn't make sense to have a, what's that? You bet. Yeah. So the kids, each class performed a music number, and then we had hired this musician, and he and his children came and played for us, and we had a dinner, and then you can see some of their art in the background that they had done at home. The business fair and luau, those don't typically go together, but we had studied South America, and we were doing a business fair, and so we combined, the highlight was the petting zoo, because we had it on one of our friends' farms, and that brought in the most money. But you can see we have dads involved. Well, they posed for a picture. We do use them, and I'll explain a little bit more how we involve our dads in some of those things. But you can see some of the activities we had there. Family hoedown, we were studying westward expansion, we made pies together, we played games, and then we had, in the living room of a family, just some dancing together. And then when we studied South America, we taught the kids, we had a family who had lived in, where did the youngs move? Nicaragua. And so they had learned the Nicaraguan skirt dance, and so they came and taught it to us, and then we did a little number with the boys, and our kids had made their own handmade piñatas, and so we just try, it's the culminating event where everyone's invested in doing something to help celebrate. So that's just a quick look of what we do in our family education center. And then micro school, more school-like, right? Usually students attend a few times per week. Micro school could even still be a 1 day a week. But a few times per week, up to the, maybe a traditional 5-day-week schedule, 5 students, and you can be a micro school. It's not based on number. Typically, 15 students or fewer. That's doable, probably for where most of you live. And then also a drop-off. So the difference really that I see between the two, and it could just be semantics too, but this is more family-centered, right, where the family's coming together. It's a whole family experience. whereas the micro school is more the traditional drop-off. And honestly, I feel like the best model is a combination of both of those. But based on what your family needs and your community, what they're willing to support, you know, you can figure out which works best for you. Benefits for this. This is the key here, right? The family-centered, faith-based, community-supported learning. And because of the small size, you can have a really tight community. Personalized, many options, flexible, low cost. You can change and adapt really quickly to meet the needs. It provides a community for your traditions and celebrations, which those then inspire a purpose and ignites that learning, and then provides opportunities to learn from others, having a community. There were stages in my family homeschooling life that I thought, I don't need a community. I had 6 kids. We had a community, right? We had our own micro school at home, and things were going great, and I didn't feel like I really necessarily needed. Maybe my kids felt that, but this is my daughter right here, my oldest. She's having a baby, just graduated from BYU, so this homeschool thing really can't work, right? She was the first one to be my guinea pig. But there's something about getting together in a group where it's one thing for your child to stand up in front of the family and be able to share what they learned. We all love you and you can feel safe with us, but it's another set of skills to be able to get up in front of your peers or people you don't know, even if they like you, but to be able to get up in front of them and say something, or to say, we've got to come to an agreement on this project we're doing together. To learn to exercise those different skills really is practicing that second commandment, to love one another. And then it's a different form of ministering. We had a mother in our group a year ago who was going through a divorce and who said, I can come to co-op or to the center, but I really am not in a position to teach right now. Well, guess what? We had a place for her. Every parent has a place and a need. We had our preschool class, and the mom who was teaching preschool had a newborn baby, and she said, if you'll just sit and hold my baby, I love teaching. I want to do this, but I need someone to watch my baby. So that was her way to help, and a way that we could minister to her and her family's needs, that her children still needed to have a community to be a part of and accepted. So finding ways that everyone can be used and useful and contribute and to learn from. Okay, so as I was thinking about, you know, we come here to American Heritage. How many of you have children who attend American Heritage? Just a few of you, okay. And the rest of you. So we come here and we look around and we're like, man, I would really love something like this in my community. My kids could benefit from this, our family could benefit from this. And so it's easy to feel maybe like my kids aren't getting this, and boo-hoo me. I tell people all the time, stop telling me what's happening at school here. I don't want to hear it, because then I think, well, my kids can't do that, I can't be there. But the benefits of what happens here you can have, just on a smaller version. And remember, for 4th season of crisis, you don't want this. In fact, not that you don't want it, it's that it's not the right time. The time right now that we need is like they said in the beginning of that film. This is the time to plant the seeds. So by building small communities, you can grow this. But just realize that as you look around, this took 50 years. 1970 to 2022, that's 50 years. And for your family to benefit from something like this, it'll be your grandchildren. But you can start building something right now. I think about President Hinckley when he had that vision for the mini temples, that he wanted to get the temples to the people, and he realized that the current way it was happening, the large temples, it just wasn't practical, and that people needed that. And so as I look at what American Heritage is trying to do right now, it reminds me of that model, that instead of taking this school out to the people, they're saying, we're going to take a mini version of it, and we're going to take it to you, but you're going to do it, but you're not going to be alone. You're going to be supported in doing it, and they're going to support you, but you know the families in your area, you know the needs, you know your own family's needs, and so it will be exactly what you need, not them telling you, this is what you need to do, and this is what you need to build, but they will support you in doing that. Does that make sense? Okay, so I've done a lot of versions of the Family Education Center and the micro school, and so I just thought I'd share with you a couple of principles that I've learned from doing it that hopefully help you if this is, you feel like your call or your need that you need to do for your families. So the first one is vision. And my brother said that, when the pandemic hit, a bunch of the moms in their neighborhood got together, about 14 of them, and they said, okay, let's create some kind of a group that can get together, and 14 different moms with 14 different needs and probably 50 different children. It kind of was a mess. And they started out for a few weeks, but they said then there was just so much frustration, and even, I know, imagine this women not getting along, kind of bickering over the things that they need. My kid needs this, and why isn't this class this way? And so it just kind of dissolved. And so what I've learned over the years is that it's really helpful for someone to set the vision. In fact, I'm just going to show you this. Has anyone read this book before? Bread and Honey? You have? Okay. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to show you some pictures. So what happens in this story is a little bear goes to school and he paints a picture for his mom. And then he's walking home to go show his mom the picture, and he runs into the owl, and the owl looks at the picture and says, that picture needs bigger eyes. So he draws bigger eyes. And then he sees the crocodile, and the crocodile says, well, that picture needs bigger teeth. Right? And then he sees the bunny, and the bunny says, oh, that picture needs bigger ears. And then the elephant sees it. Oh, great. The elephant says, it needs a bigger nose. Right? Can you see? I don't know if you can even see that. But then he takes it to the lion, and the lion says, well, it needs a mane. And then he takes it to the giraffe, and the giraffe says, it needs a bigger neck. And you see, by the end of the day, when he takes the picture to his mom, it was supposed to be a picture of her. And this is what it looks like. And this is just an analogy of kind of what happens when you start saying, well, what do you want in a group? And what do you want? And what do you want? And don't hear me wrong. It's good to counsel and to find out what people need. But someone has got to set the vision and set the path. And so the last two groups that I've organized have been really successful because I've said I've decided, this is what my family needs, and I create something around it. And I maybe ask a friend or two, hey, what do you think about this? Am I missing something? What would you do differently? Just counseling with a couple of people one-on-one. And then I have my plan, and I approach just a small group of moms who I know I can trust, who I know will do their part, and I say, hey, I have this idea. Are you interested in doing it with me? Not saying, what would you do differently? I'm asking their opinion. I'm saying, this is what I'm doing. Do you want to do this with me? And if I just have one other family or two other families, that's enough. Because that group will be tight, and it can be strong, and we can grow from there. But really having someone to set the vision, and I was sharing this with my brother, and he said, if one of the moms would have just done that for our group, I think everyone else would have gotten on board. But when you say, well, what do you want? Well, then everyone has an opinion, right? But to be able to say, this is what my family needs, and that's probably the key to that part too. To say, I'm going to create something that meets my specific family's needs. Because if you're thinking, I want to meet these people's needs, then pretty soon your own family's needs aren't being met, and then you don't want to go anymore. So to have a vision of what you want, what your family needs, create it, and then invite people to join you who you can trust. Not just going on Facebook and saying, who wants to join my co-op? That's really risky. At least having a couple of key people that you can trust and know can build it with you. Okay, so vision. The second one is to build where you are. To lift where you stand, and to use what you have. I have a good friend who is not in this class right now. She and I were talking about, hey, let's maybe this fall start a 4-day-a-week micro school. She lives in Iowa, and I live in Nebraska. But we're on the border, so we're about 45 minutes away. And we're like, man, where do we do this? Can we meet somewhere halfway? And at the end of the conversation, we said, you know what? You do one where you are, I'm going to do one where I am. Because pretty soon it just gets, it's kind of like in politics, where if you are in the middle, you have no support. You have to pick a side, right? So with your group, pick a side so that you have support, even if it's only 2 people. But if you try and be in the middle and try and please everyone, or make it convenient for you, make it close for you. Also, kind of like the church, how we do congregations geographically. There is power in living around the people who you are working with. Just having that closer connection. So wherever you are, figure out how to build with the people that are there. And then also in time of crisis, you're able to help each other much quicker. Why did I want to show you that slide? Oh, this is just an example of building where you are, lifting where you are. The year that we started our family education center, we wanted to do it in a church, but it was COVID, and none of the churches where we lived were renting out their buildings. So we said, okay, what do we have? We have a home. And so you can see we have different spaces, the kitchen, the basement, the living room, where we are able to just utilize what we have. Okay, the next one is traditions and celebrations. And these things, you know, American Heritage is big on tradition and celebration, and that's one thing I really appreciated learning from them. They build unity and culture, and if you've ever read or thought about how do I build culture in my family or how do I build unity, all the experts say traditions are like the glue. And so these are really critical in a group. Sometimes traditions can be started off the bat, and other times they just spring up naturally and organically. In our group, our tradition is that every celebration we have, we love to dance because it gets us close together. It gets the children close together. You're talking to people, you're interacting. So almost all of our celebrations, we try and figure out how do we sneak in a dance. Maybe it's at the opening when everyone's there to kind of loosen up, get everyone together. Maybe it's at the end, but that's kind of been something that we've done at every one of ours. And then I showed you some of these earlier. These are some of our traditions we've been doing every year. The art one, the camping, we did the camping one this last year, and the kids are begging to do that one again. So we'll do that again. We tied that to our astronomy unit so we could be out in nature and look at the stars. Okay, lift the whole family. Find a way to involve moms. That's typically the ones who are doing the teaching, so that's not so hard. But finding a way to involve dads. And I might ask for a couple comments from dads at the end of how you have done this in your family. Find a way to involve the youth and the children. So going back to here, so dads have to dance. Parents aren't there to be on the sidelines, right? We involve the dads in our, here at one of our celebrations, there was a game, and I said, I want the dads to lead it. They didn't plan it, but I said, they need to feel some kind of a connection. They're not with us in the day-to-day. And the kids need to be involved with them. So I just gave them the materials and said, hey, would you manage this game here? And so that's an easier way to involve them at these celebrations, is to just, an activity, ask them to be involved, or to lead it. And just any way that you can, get them involved. One way that we support our moms, every 6 weeks, we, during our time that we meet together, we have a moms meeting, and we have these are our scholars, our high schoolers and middle schoolers. They are the ones who do the teaching of the children, so that we as moms can meet together. We talk about how each of our classes are going, if there's any struggles, any celebrations that they want to share, highlights, ahas from their classes. We talk about, because our celebration always happens on the 6th week, and our meetings on the 6th week, we talk about, okay, remember the celebration is tomorrow, and everyone has their assignments, we know what we're doing, any last minute questions. And then we do just some talk time too, to be enriched together. And someone will usually share, some kind of an uplifting thought or things. But that's been really helpful for us to stay connected, because usually when we meet, we're there, we do our classes or with our kids, and then we leave, and we didn't have that chance for the moms to connect. So this has been really helpful. So finding ways to, it doesn't have to be, during class, but having a time though for those moms to feel connected to each other. Did I go backwards?
How often do you meet? How often do you do that?
We meet on Thursday afternoons for 2 hours. And
No, like with the parent.
moms, every 6 weeks. So we do a unit study is 6 weeks, and so that last week. We also talk about what's coming up in our next unit study. These are the topics, and here's some things. One thing that we found with our youth, so it says, lift the whole community. Find a way to help all of your kids. We found that our kids wanted more talk time, so we just told the parents, if your kids need that, come a half an hour early before we start and stay a half an hour later. Our youth were wanting more connection time. Then we started a once a month, youth night, so they could gather. But finding ways that the whole family can benefit from the group, that it's not just the kids or just the mom, but the whole family. And the last one, so American Heritage, has the 4R method. Well, the 4S method is what I kind of came up with here. Slow, small, simple and sustainable, and sufficient. So let's start with the slow, okay? I remember probably 12 years ago when I first started homeschooling my daughter. I called Peter and was like, okay, when can American Heritage build their school in Omaha? And he was like, oh, if it were just as easy as building a building, we'd be doing it all over the world. So I said, well, fine, I'll do it myself, right? And so this was something he said to me, it seemed like all the time. At least I think it was Peter. Crawl, walk, run. Like, take your time to get things right, or at least settle before you start to walk. And then walk. It was Leland? Okay, Leland would say this then. Another way maybe you heard this, roots before fruits. And then, if you've read the Narnia series, nests before eggs. That do the preparation and go slow. Don't be afraid to go slow. Small. Small's good because it's a testing period. Don't feel like, man, I'm going to do this and I only have one other family that wants to do it with me. Great, because this allows this to happen. It allows you to have this testing period. So this idea that you had, is it really going to work? This will help us at least to get set up with a routine and start to establish some culture so that when another family wants to join or 5 more families want to join, this is so much easier because we already have that established. There's already some kids that know that routine and they get the picture and the vision and everything that we're doing. And it also builds really deep trust and friendship by being small. Simple. Simple and sustainable. I don't know if I need to say any more than that, but just remembering that you still have a family, you still have a calling. Life is still going to happen. We need to leave margin in our life for life to happen. And so to not get ourselves so complex and so busy and so just difficult, I guess is the word, complex, that it becomes unsustainable. I've done it. So please learn from me. If you make it simple, then it can be sustainable. And then lastly, we have sufficient. Being innovative and creative. It's kind of like, necessity is the mother of invention. Use what you have. And don't be afraid to go to the Lord and ask Him for creative ideas and creative solutions. If you don't have garden beds at your school, then do an indoor garden. If you don't have room for a library, figure out how maybe you can have a mobile library that one of the parents, can bring it in their car or something. We had do you remember a long time in nursery? I bet they don't have these now because it's probably a tipping hazard. But those toy carts that used to open up on a hinge, you have one still? We had one of the dads build one of those so that we could have a place to put our stuff in and close it at the end of the night and put a lock on it so that our things would stay safe. But just finding innovative solutions. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I think sometimes we get caught up in that, but this is what I want and it has to be this way. I think if Nephi can build a boat without boat lessons, right, without going to boat school, then the Lord can help you build a school without having to have everything perfect and having you have gone to learn how to do this. He will help us. I know that. But recognizing when what you have is sufficient enough and that He will magnify that and that He can and He will. Okay. Let's see. Oh. That was in my end slide, but I'll say it now. This is my favorite quote of all times, and I tell all my teachers, anyone, it doesn't really go with micro schools, but it goes to you. As we're gathering, it's fun to do fun things, and it's great to do fun things, but let's not forget this, that I should be sorry if I only entertain them. I wish to make them better. The gathering is to make us all better. It's to help our relations, it's to help our children grow, it's to help them learn, and help us be more like our Savior. The last thing I want to share with you is, if you think about Noah and the brother Jared and Nephi all building boats, what advice would they have for each other? What advice would he have had for the brother Jared? What advice would the brother Jared have had for Nephi, do you think?
Just keep having the word trust.
I love that. Anyone else? What comes to your mind?
What did she say?
She said trust. The thing that I keep thinking about is that they would just say, have faith, and it will happen. Go to the Lord often, right? It's not like they needed to have all these instructions of how to do it, but the Lord would provide that, and that they had it within themselves and they just needed to go to the Lord to ask for how to utilize that. And so I look at each one of you and think, you have it within you to do whatever it is that the Lord will ask you. If you go to Him and ask Him for His help to build your boat, to build your school, your micro school, your family education center, whatever that looks like for you. Really creating these family education centers and micro schools is about creating communities of strength. It's about the learning, but I feel like it's primarily about creating the community, because I feel like as these days ahead, we are going to need one another, and these communities build those relationships to have us be prepared to support each other in ways that are beyond even learning and school. So Peter wanted me to stop right now so that we could have time for questions or comments. Tim?
Question.
Yes?
My wife would love to do this. His wife has a group that actually does pretty much exactly this.
Awesome.
Half an hour down the road. It's too far away.
Yeah.
Our biggest hurdle is finding other people.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to find, we know a few other homeschoolers in the area, but their vision of homeschooling is so different. It's not, we're not even talking the same language.
Yeah.
So I don't expect you to have an answer, but that's the hurdle.
Finding the right people, absolutely. I would start maybe even just having moms over with their kids for just some play dates or things, or meeting at the park, and talking about maybe your homeschool philosophies, and then saying, hey, I have this idea for a gathering. What do you think about this? And first, you know what I mean?
It sounds like dating. Yeah.
Oh, the problem that I have found is that if you just say to whoever, right, then what's happened to my kids when I've just said, hey, come join? Well, my kid, you can't force children to be friends with other children. And so we go to this group and they're like, but I'm not really friends with them. And I'm really friends with these other people over here. Or it's really hard to force relationships. So it's good to find just one or two. Or what I would even do is look around and see, okay, is there a family that I really do get along with or that I like who is not currently homeschooling, who I could talk out of it and say, we're going to do this together. Right? Did I say talk out of homeschooling? Talk out of homeschooling, because we're going to do this thing together, we're going to support each other, and I don't know, does anyone have any thoughts for him about that?
Well, I'm just gonna say, we're all here and we're all homeschoolers. Where do we all live? Maybe there's some way of networking here, like,
Yeah.
and just, I mean, live in Pleasant Grove, I didn't even know that, you know? And I'm like, hey, let's do stuff.
Peter, do you want to answer that?
Well, come to the next hour. Just stay here, and you'll learn a lot about how technology will actually.
American Heritage can help you with that part. Yeah.
Well, there's the Facebook page, AHS 101. So I don't know if your wife would utilize that or not, but maybe posting, sure,
Yeah.
this is what I'm looking for. I mean, that's one good thing, there's a couple good things about this page, but only if you, but that's one good thing, is your ability to network.
You bet.
So, here's what I did for your wife. So she did a book group before my kids were in school, and she found all of that.
So she just did something at a much lower level, lower impact.
It was really inspiring. We were reading books that just made us want to become better, and we could bring that back to our families. But it led into curiosity.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, because we had a group that did that same thing too. We did books together, like we read, Gatto, John Taylor Gatto. What's that book? Dumbing Us Down. We read that together. We read, my mind's blank. But yeah, reading some books together helps you kind of get all on that same page or understanding of different learning stuff. Yeah, you can see who's interested.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing along with that whole thing too is like, I'm one that's like, well, my kids from homeschool, either from public school, put it in the homeschool, and just like seeing the joy she had in it. Like she wasn't afraid to tell us about it. Like sometimes we get nervous, like, well, what are they gonna think about me homeschooling? But like, that's one thought I've had over and over again. I need to show the joy of this more often
So kind of being like homeschool missionaries, sort of, right? Not being afraid to share the goodness.
To like talk about how wonderful it is.
Yeah. Do you have a good approach that you like, or any of you have a good approach that when you're talking to someone who? 3 minutes? Okay.
I just like to make people mad and tell them how much better it is.
Do you know what we did today for math?
It's a fine line, right? Like you're trying to do it like, you know, without offending them, without like, it is mom diggity, like.
Wait, Lynn, do you have a question or comment?
Well, just, I remember a conversation I had with Peter a few years ago in my office, and we were talking about how parents can be kind of like the CEOs of their children's education, right? But it's not so much about the place that they go, so much as who they're learning from. If you want to expose your children to great men and women, of course that means you, but it also means sometimes you do hire someone to be trained you don't know how to be. But you should make that decision very carefully, very deliberately.
Sure.
It might be at the public school or the charter school or an online school or a homeschool or, again, but that's the most important role change that needs to happen is that parents need to see themselves as in charge of the education. And that there are many options, and I can be proactive in choosing from among those options. And many of them might take place at home. But the most important change is that role change. I'm not just a passive, reactive parent that has only 1 or 2 choices. I have many choices that I can choose when I have a child.
Like, 1 second, Peter. I remember taking my son, he was doing part-time schooling and he was going to a football game and I dropped him off there, and as I was pulling out of the parking lot, I just couldn't believe the people that were pulling in. It was grandmas and grandpas and little kids, like whole families were coming to the football game. And it just dawned on me that when you tell someone that, or invite them to homeschool, you're saying, leave your community, leave your support system, and come over here where there's nothing, or it feels like there's nothing, right? And so that's why I feel like it's so important. If you don't want a community for your kids, then do it for you as the mother. You need a community. The second year I homeschooled, we went to a co-op, and every single day I got there, my 2 friends would be like, talk me off the ledge. They're like, you can do this. 1 more week. I'm like, I can't do this, I can't do this. Like, you can do it, you can do it. And every week, for that whole year, they were like, it was like the ministering sisters, right? The homeschool ministering sisters. Here we are, you can do this, and let's talk about this. But you can be that for other people, and by creating even just a small 3 families, you can create enough support for these moms so they feel confident enough, or not even just confident enough, that there's something about community, that we are designed to need each other, and we are better together. Even if you think you've got it all together with your kids at home in your own little micro school, there's something beautiful to be had in a group, and especially for moms. Peter?
The idea of being a mentor or visionary for homeschooling came up, and I thought a lot about how you try to influence families when you're talking to them about this option, what you're doing. And to some extent, you have to abandon the lingo that comes with so much baggage. If you try to tell somebody from a homeschool with you, then they will run for the hills. They think they know what that means, they don't really. It's one of the things that I really love about the Family Education Center, I love about the whole micro school concept, is it's starting to draw families out of public school in a way that homeschooling can't. What is it? It's homeschooling, right? But it just has a different name. And it has a different support too. And so we have to give families that organization, right? They build around the Family Education Center or a micro school or a commercial, because it's not just a name. It actually has to be supported and help that organization to operate effectively, to organize simply, and to invite families into it so that they don't feel like they're leaving public school or homeschool.
Well, homeschooling sounds like I'm doing something alone. If you say, come join this. And I hope it's okay to say this, but Peter and I had talked about potentially putting something together on a month-to-month basis, maybe a Zoom meeting or a podcast or something, where we'll continue to help you guys if you're interested in jumping on these meetings with more information about how to do this. American Heritage has some wonderful governing documents. We'll talk about how you plan your year, what resources they have that can support. Right now they have a lot on the website I don't think anyone even knows about, like bylaws and things like that, but also just the how do you plan your year? How do you organize the class? And not that you have to follow that, but I found when I've done these things, it's helpful just to talk to people, what have you done? And then the ideas start to churn, right? Oh, yeah, I could do that, but I would do this. For our group, it could work this way. So just giving you some sample ideas of, this is maybe these couple, different models have been done this way, and this is something that you could look at and say, oh, that would be helpful, or just to give you some other ideas. Last comment, Rebecca.
I just wondered, so I got into a conversation and I missed what you said. Can you have like what you said to them somewhere else, like the way that you were sharing about creating a micro AHS somewhere else?
No, American Heritage has some supporting documents on the family school about how to, more like the nitty gritty about writing your bylaws and training if you had a board of directors, if you get to that stage. But they have some of the things that are even for just someone starting right now that doesn't have this big organization to manage.
So we tried to do something small like this. This is amazing, but one girl we found was 3 families, and 2 of the families are sick. Like you're trying to teach.
This is real life, and so we would just say, you know what, okay, then we'll just skip this week and we'll do it next week, or how about we do it Monday instead of Friday? Just really letting real life happen, right?
We have that same thing. We have 5 hours, and if somebody's sick, either someone's like, well, I'm going to be gone, I'm going to double up on 2 lessons, or we just skip that one, and then they have to.
Or even, I would say maybe just combine everyone together. We only have 3 families here, then we're going to be together instead of maybe you were separate before, but we're doing the best we can, and it's good for the kids to see that. I'm sorry, you had your hand up, and I skipped you.
I was just going to say, what do you do with the bylaws and the rules or legal documents?
Yes, that will be a discussion for another time.
I know, that's like in-depth.
Yeah, and then we can talk after this, but thank you.
We have got so much to talk about in 45 minutes. We better get going. We're going to get going. We're going to go fast. Okay, the point of this is not to give you all the information about what's coming this fall. You could never do that in 45 minutes. I'm going to take 15 minutes with Coach Nate. How many of you are excited about Coach Nate being back? Where is Coach Nate? Oh, I think he's helping with Coach Yahosh. He'll be in here in just a little bit. And then after we've talked about LiftEd, this new piece of software that is coming, and then we're going to talk about the new courses and the new scope and sequence for LiftEd courses. Yeah, that will be exciting, right? And then the Math and Language Arts team right here. That's not the whole team, though. Where's DeWan? There she is. That's part of it. Oh boy. They're gonna shut me down as soon as I get to 15 minutes. And then we have the AHS Online team back here. Great people. Dr. Pablo, I know you're probably very sad. Yes, I see some nods. He is, what's he doing? Well, no, that was yesterday. Today he was doing the thing up at the, he's some delegation thing. Okay, LiftEd. All together now. That is the tagline for LiftEd. And it does, it just brings everything together. It brings us together with you together with each other, with your students, families together, families of all faiths together. That's one of the things I'm most excited about with this LiftEd platform, is that it's going to, the software will be developed in a way that allows families of all faiths to produce their connections to their faith. So you've been doing it for years in family school, and you get to the end of research, and then what? We make a bridge to a gospel principle. Well, usually those gospel principles aren't really restored gospel principles, are they? They are, because we make connections to Scripture and quotes from prophets, but the church doesn't own teamwork and unity and honesty and charity, right? And so we want to create a platform on which a member of the Catholic Church. Do we have any Catholics in the room? We actually do have a Catholic in the room. Go ahead and stand up. I'm so glad that I met you. But we want his children and grandchildren and his faith community to learn in the traditions of their faith, right? And bring them closer to God through their faith. So we're building a platform that will build bridges among families of all faiths. And then what will happen in these family education centers? Who can come? Everybody gets to come to the Family Education Center. What a great opportunity to realize and learn in context of other faiths. And for us, for our children, for our grandchildren, to be able to learn that we have a lot more in common than we have than our differences. And there are differences. There are unique differences from faith to faith. But there's so many things that we talk about in family school. I always tell people of other faiths as they live through family school, I challenge them and I say, you flip through all of these gospel principles, and then you tell me the one that you object to. Because you don't really get to it, do we? So there's a great opportunity there. This is not another job for mom. This is a piece of software that will allow mom and dad, but let's be honest, it's usually mom. I have learned a thing or two in 10 years working with you homeschool moms. It's 98% moms, and it is the moms that are doing the work, but we're trying to make the job easier. We want homeschooling to be something that you can do in a really meaningful way in the moments, and this piece of software will allow you to do that. Students are independently learning from home in many cases, but they're never alone. That might sound a little odd, but it's true, and we'll show you how. And we can understand that with the right kind of technology, even littles can lead. Oh, I have a clicker. Sorry about that. Content. Importantly, on this piece of software, in order for this to be a student-facilitated experience, in order for us to take a lot of the heavy lifting off of mom's shoulders, we have to produce content. We have to hire a teacher, put them in front of a camera, and not just any teacher, but a great teacher. Our kind of Mr. Rogers, our kind of Sesame Street. No, Mr. Rogers. Our kind of Mr. Rogers. This is an example of the studio that's being developed down in the, the set that's being developed in the studio down in this vineyard studio that we just built. In fact, we just got our certificate of occupancy yesterday, so it's kind of timely. On June 1st, we'll start recording out of the studio. This is a drawing of the set that was drawn by David Warner. You heard me talk about David Warner in the last meeting. He's helping us in a lot of different ways. David was the former executive director of the Family and Priesthood Department at the church for 17 years. He's brilliant. He's a creative genius, this man. And every pageant, play, every Christmas program you've ever watched the church has produced, he's been at the heart of all of that. So he's helping us to develop the set and to hire teachers, the right kind of teachers, the kind of teachers that can really connect with youth and be genuine. It is, well, you saw just little bits and pieces of it in that video that we showed earlier, but the content's coming together in a really amazing way. One of the important differences between Power Hour, some of you are familiar with Power Hour, that's the live class component. How many of you have children that are in Power Hour? Many. So that will continue. And that will improve significantly too, but mostly because of Coach Nate and what he's doing. We don't have a lot of things that we're going to do to innovate the classroom experience. Nate's going to talk with you about some of the ideas to improve that quite a bit, and he'll share here in just a little bit. But the other side of that is the content. And so there are these two experiences on Lift Ed that the students will have access to. Power Hour, we're going to call it Power Hour Plus. I tried to take away Power Hour. We were just going to call it the live class. And there was like a revolt in the office. Kids love Power Hour. So we're going to stick with that name that we hatched in like 5 minutes. When COVID hit in March 2020, we're like, Pablo, we got to do a live class. What do we call it? Power Hour. Why not? And so it's going to be called Power Hour Plus. We're really innovating there. We are, and Nate's going to share with you a little bit about that. But the other side of this is the MyPath content. It's how they access the content. This is the really exciting thing about the software, about the Lift Ed platform, is how they access content and what they can do together while they're learning. It's not an independent experience. The very first thing that happens when they log into Lift Ed each day is they'll have their own calendar, and they'll have a place where they can chat with their favorite friends, and they can see their progress over the last month, and they can check their progress in each of their courses. They can see how many points they've earned, and those points can even be converted into things like cleats or piano lessons or whatever the things are you want them to have that you're going to pay for anyway. That won't be in version 1, but it's coming. We have conceptually designed probably version 10 of this. Version 1's coming this fall. Most of this that you see, it will be in version 1. But the first thing that they'll do is they'll come to class, they'll come online, like a release of a show on Hulu or Netflix. The lesson will drop every day. It'll be a new lesson every day, and there'll be a little countdown, and they can't access it until that time has a, oh boy, 5 minutes. Seriously? You're robbing me, Dawn. They click on the lesson of the day, and they come into this experience. Actually, I don't even think I have time to show it to you. This is a total teaser for the webinar we're going to do, not this Monday, but the Monday after that. So on May 2nd, we're going to do a webinar for about 2 hours and show you all of Lift Ed, all of math, language arts, AHS online. So I'm just trying to give as much of it as I possibly can. I might be able to steal Nate's time too, because if he's not going to come in, then I will take it. Okay, maybe I'll just show you quickly what that looks like. They go into the path, they do a quick review game, all their cameras are on, they go through what looks like what? What does this look like? What? Oh, I've done this before, and I have to stop. I have to end the show, and then I have to... Okay, now you can see it? Yes, you can. What does this look like? Yeah, like Kahoot. You missed it, though. I can go through it again. All their cameras are on. Now, we're not there. This is all a synchronous experience that they're having with content without adults there. There will be a mother on duty for every one of these. importantly. But they'll go through this. This is a review game. It's not at the end of the power hour. It's at the beginning of their study group. This is called a study group, called My Path. Then they come into their research video and they watch a wonderful teacher. I'm going to sit down. This is really strange. And then while they're watching the video, they'll be asked a knowledge check. And they will answer a couple questions throughout just to make sure they're still with us. At some point during the research, they'll have an opportunity to learn more and dive deeper. If they want to, they could do maybe it's something else we're going to learn about anemones, or a video we're going to watch about the shark and the remora fish, or some craft, or they'll record a video. But they can do that kind of exploring. Oh no, now he's here.
I was hanging out with the youth. They're hard to get away from.
Here's the piece. Here's the piece where they'll see the reason and relate. Right. This is the application to the principle. And if you want, as parents, if you want them to see the Jewish version, you can. If you want them to see the Muslim version of this content, they can. If you want to toggle it off, you can as well. This is actually where they'll also be able to see if my faith isn't represented. I can click on a little button, and I can add that from my home, or from my mosque, or from my church building. It can be anybody that we crowdsource this content from that can add their flavor of our content. Okay, that's all I have time for. You'll have to just wait till next Monday. Nate, take 2 more minutes. Sorry.
No problem.
You can do this.
I can be quick. Awesome. Well, hello everyone. Can I just first off say that I'm so excited about this. My wife and I met up for a quick powwow after lunch, and she was like, "I'm so excited. We don't even have kids yet, right?" So we really are. We're passionate about this, and we're already thinking ahead, wanting to provide something awesome for our kids. And I hope to be able to be a part of providing something incredible for yours and all of your friends. So 3 main things that I've been thinking a lot about, and I would like to bring more of with Power Hour Plus next year. I would like to increase our connection between the kids and the coaches. Their engagement, which can be tricky with all the different ages, right? As well as increase the amount of application that they can take away from Power Hour, right? The things that they're going to be able to go and implement into their lives to make their lives better and happier. And then for the next slide, these are kind of the 3 methods that I want to be able to provide these things. The first one, class, should actually say class size. I deleted it on accident before I sent it to Peter. But we're going to be reducing class size for Power Hour next year, which is going to do a couple of things. It should make it a little bit easier for shyer students to be involved and get engaged. It should facilitate more connection because it's not quite as daunting to raise your hand. There's not quite as many people. So we're going to reduce class size a little bit. And then we're going to be focused on providing more experienced coaching in 2 ways. One, we're going to be doing lesson prep together with our learning coaches. So after they finish their coaching today, they're going to come to campus. We're going to meet up in the boardroom for a half an hour to hash out what went well, what we can improve on from the lesson of the day, and then spend the full next hour lesson prepping together so we can get that synergy flowing and have kind of combine our experience, right? The other way is introducing a concept we've been talking about where admins on our team become substitute learning coaches. So when our college-age student learning coaches need a substitute because they're off on a break or something, that's when the admins get to step in and do a little bit of coaching as well, which is going to add a whole new dimension of experience to the Power Hour time, because these are parents, right? They know children in a way that I don't yet, and neither do the other college students. And so that would be cool to be able to add that whole new level of experience with Power Hour Plus. Last thing is we're going to be dividing the elementary age group into early and upper. After talking to Mike Madsen and doing a one-on-one training with him, which I was so grateful for, he was like, something remarkable does happen around the age of 8. And the cognitive abilities change, and go figure, right? Age of accountability. Anyway, so we're going to be leaving that up to the families, because we want there to be kind of an overlap as far as ages go. So roughly kindergarten to, what do we say, like age 10, and roughly age 7 to age 14 or something like that. So that way it's up to the families to choose which group feels like a good fit for them and when to advance on to the upper elementary stage. So we're excited to put in these changes and increase the connection that they feel, the engagement, and the application that they take away from Power Hour Plus next year.
There we go. So my name's April Mendenhall, and I oversee all of the curriculum development for American Heritage Worldwide, which is a really, really fun job because I love to learn and I love the product. I love family school, and so I get to spend a lot of time reading and studying family school lessons, and I get to spend a lot of time with really great thought leaders like Angie Glad and other people in this room and not in this room, talking about what makes great homeschooling and what is the best way to teach our children. And so, I know this is the question you've all had, is what are we going to do next year? So we are actually changing things up a little bit. Big surprise. We're actually taking 2 new approaches, and you heard Angie use this word in her presentation. We are going to a unit studies approach. And so I'd love to have Angie come up and take 30 seconds and just explain to us what is unit studies, because you actually said that in your presentation.
So currently, students using American Heritage, they study, like, I think history on Monday and science Tuesday, geography Wednesday, and so on and so on. Well, rather than doing that, we're taking a whole course. So let's say history course is 32 lessons for a whole year, right? We're going to divide that up into 4 units. So rather than having every Monday history, right, we're going to take 8 lessons and do them every day for 2 weeks. And then second quarter, 8 more lessons of history every day for 2 weeks, and so on for 4 quarters. And actually, it's only going to be 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so Friday can be maybe Family Education Center day. And what this does, as a homeschool mom, I am so excited about this because this makes my job so much easier. Rather than being like, okay, I got to have a history project on Monday, and I got to get the step of the science project on Tuesday, and then Wednesday we're doing geography, and so I have to get the book from the library. I'm just doing one topic. And we can read a book, a whole book in 2 weeks, instead of saying, Monday on history, we're going to read this out of this history book, and on Tuesday, we're going to read out of this one. And it just gets so complicated, and this just simplifies it for mom and for kids. We can go deep dive. If we're only worried about history this week, my prep is made lighter, and we can just take deep dives and rabbit trails, and so that I'm super excited about.
So that's a really big change, right? We're going to do one subject for 2 weeks, and then we'll switch. And then we're going to take a cross-curricular approach. So because we have so much great content on the family school, if we're only going to school 4 days a week, we cannot cover all of the wonderful subjects that we have. So we're going to take music and art and literature and take a cross-curricular approach and put those in our other courses, which are history, science, world studies, and growth. So these are the 4 main courses that will be integrating the art lessons and the music lessons from family school, and all of the literature lessons will be in here. And the literature will also, you'll see it appear again in the language arts program, the new language arts program. So let's talk a little bit about these. So if you start with the family school in kindergarten and you go all the way through 8th grade, you can have some courses once, some courses you can take twice, the way that we've done it, because we've been on a 6-year scope. But if we do it on a 4-year scope, and we split that up so that instead of spending 1 whole year doing ancient civilizations, we're going to spend 2 weeks doing ancient civilizations for history, then we're going to rotate through these other subjects, then we're going to circle back and we're going to move farther up in time. So every year for history, we start in ancient civilizations and move to modern times as we break it up throughout the year. So that way we're getting a greater breadth of curriculum. So that if your child joins in 3rd grade, and we did zoology last year, they're not going to miss out on that. We're going to fit that in. So for science, we're going to start this coming year with botany, and we're going to go to geology. We're going to do 8 lessons in anatomy and 8 lessons in physics, and we're going to split those up over every single term. World Studies is a new class that we're creating. We're kind of taking the lead from the geography lessons, But this focus will actually be, World Studies will be taught right before history. It'll be the 2 weeks before history, and it's going to give your children place and context for where that history is going to take place. So for our first Ancient Civilizations unit, we're going to do 2 weeks World Studies of just Africa. And we're going to focus on that continent specifically before we go into that part of history. And then growth are our elective courses, and that will, we're going to have a new health class. We're going to have a great new leadership program that we're working on with Tammy Jensen and her team at Who I Really Am. We're going to have lots of different things. So I just got my 30-second warning. This is the calendar for next year. As you can see, growth is 2 weeks. World Studies is 2 weeks. History and Science. We'll be publishing this very, very soon. This is brand new. I know you're all taking pictures, and I just have to add the caveat that this is subject to change, right? I think we need t-shirts that say that, American Heritage Worldwide, subject to change, right? And we appreciate and love that you pivot with us and you're flexible and you go on this journey with us as we explore. Finally, this is the scope and sequence. If you want to take a quick shot at this, this is a really high overview of what we'll be doing in each course for the year. And if you notice, growth still has one section that's to be determined. This could be a world studies class or a world religions class, or maybe you have something really great, 8 lessons that you're like, I think we could squeeze a project-based learning class in there, right? If you have something that you would love to have us teach, and you would love to see the students of American Heritage Worldwide actively participate in, I would love to hear from you. We want to know what you would be interested in your children learning for those 2 weeks. So come to the webinar on May 2nd and we'll talk more about this. And my time is up.
I'm going to stand over here. Okay, my name is Rachel Davis. I'm the project manager for the K-8 Language Arts program. And I have to tell you, there's exciting things coming. It's really exciting what's coming this fall and also in years to come. So behind all of our language arts content, I have this amazing team, and I'm so blessed to work with these women who are experienced and have education behind them and are also mothers, and incredible team. I want to recognize a couple of them who are here today. Dewan, if she'll stand up, she has been a big part of this as well. My other right-hand person in all of this. She has a PhD in language and language and literacy education. Is that right? Yes. Anyways, she's awesome and been great. And then I know I have a couple of writers. If you'll stand as well, I just want to recognize you. So, anyways, I have an amazing team, and I'm very blessed to work with them. So for our language arts program, there's 3 domains. We have reading, written language, and speaking and listening. And this is a lot to read, so don't. You do not have to read all of this. But this kind of shows you how in each of the levels, underneath those 3 major components, reading, written language, and speaking and listening, underneath each of those domains, there are major components from each of them. So there's phonemic awareness and phonics, fluency, comprehension that go under reading. There's spelling, grammar, and writing that fall under the written language part. And then communication, vocabulary, and memorizations and poetry under the speaking and listening. So all of this is in our language arts lessons. Some things that are to make note of is for this fall, it is a parent-led version. And so it will be on the Family School site, and it will be parent-led. The following year after, that will be student-led. And in all of the lessons for this first year, there will be LDS connections in lessons. So there will be content, language arts content, bathed in the light of the gospel. So kind of neat with our lessons. And then for K3, we'll have little readers and passages that we're creating with our lessons. And then for levels 4 through 8, we're building our reading and writing units around literature. So very exciting. So a lot of information throwing at you, but again, at the webinar, we'll give you more information about language arts. So.
My name
is Carrie Nielsen, and I'm the project manager over the math curriculum that we're creating for K through 8. I would like to show my team. Rachel got to show hers, so I get to show mine. These are wonderfully talented people. I was going to say women, but we do have one man. They are wonderfully talented people, and we have found them all over the country, from Virginia to Florida to Missouri to Wyoming, and even some here locally. By the way, you might recognize one of them. Miss Amy, will you stand up? Amy is our kindergarten level math writer, and she has done an amazing job. I'm really blessed to work with these people. They're all very talented, and we've been working really hard for the past year in writing math lessons. And I'm proud to say that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're nearing the end. With our math program, we also have broken it up into different domains. 5 different domains of math you can see here. I'm not going to go over all of those. Again, we're going to talk more in detail at our webinar on May 2nd, but you can take a quick snapshot of that. So 5 domains in math. All of these domains are represented in every level. We'll go into more detail. Kind of like Rachel said, there's a lot of information here. You don't have to dissect it all, but you can see that there are some very broad topics that are discussed in each level, and you can see there are some that are hit in every level, obviously, different mastery levels. So, level 3, 4, 5, all the way up to level 8. So we'll just keep going here. Speaking of levels, our math program is a mastery-based program, and every lesson is based on an essential skill. And once they have reached that essential skill, we'll move on to a higher level. As Rachel said, our first version is parent-led. That will be released in the fall. One other kind of interesting thing about our math program is every math lesson starts with Math in My World. And we have drawn a real-world concept or real-world situation around a math concept so that it's easier for the child to relate. You know, counting, Amy can recognize this. This is one of her lessons. Counting, you know, does it matter how much flour or eggs we use in pancakes? Yes. Who doesn't relate to making pancakes, right? So every lesson has a Math in My World portion. Every lesson also has practice problems that are leveled. And what we mean by that is they're divided by rigor based on Webb's depth of knowledge. So we have some simple problems, next level problems, finally up to strategic thinking level problems. Each lesson has interactive questions that they can click on the answer. Every unit has a summative assessment, and lessons follow, activities follow the lesson. So we're so excited. This has been such a fun project. Okay, and my time is up. Oh, wait. We're going to show you how to access it really quick, hopefully. We're getting there. So math and language arts will be accessed on our family school website, and Rachel's gonna click for us. Okay, so you recognize this page. We're gonna scroll down, and you'll see that math K through 8, oops, is dark right now. Oops, we're going to language arts. All right, language arts, and all the courses will be divided up by level. And then we can go back to math. You can see that they're grayed out right now because they're not live yet. But yeah, math courses are divided up by level.
Can you show them a lesson?
Yeah, we can go to 8th. Oh.
You can kind of see how, at least
Yeah.
see how they're going to be laid out for parents. And
Yeah.
this is a parent-led resource. You'll see it's scripted just like family school is.
You go back. So let's go back just a little bit. I want to show you something.
You remember the 5 domains of math, right? So number and number sense was the first domain, and then the different lessons that are under that domain will be listed here. And then you can, they're also named with an I can statement. That's the mastery skill that they're going to be learning for that lesson. And then you can click on it. Yep, again, this is a level 8 lesson. Here's a Math in My World. And oops, do you want to go up and show them the preparation section? So under the preparation section, here's your resource list. Here's your practice problems with your key. Parents will be able to print those out. Students will actually do pen and paper practice problems, and then the parent can check it with the key. Vocabulary that's needed for the lesson. Math in My World. Math lesson. Now remember, this is a level 8, so it's longer. And then here are the questions. Every once in a while, after the concept is taught, the question will be asked, and then the student can click the answer to see if they've got it correct. Sum it up and record. Again, that's your practice problems. So, very, very excited. Like I said, we've been working hard this past year. Thank you.
Well, hello, we don't have much time, so we should just get on with it. I'm Elizabeth Henderson, and I do admissions for AHS online middle and high school for credit. This is Deanna Rowan, and she is the business manager for all of American Heritage Worldwide. This is the rest of our admin team who's not here. You know Dr. Pablo probably. It was Dr. Pablo's dream to come to American Heritage School and build a middle and high online school. And now he is living his dream, even though he's not here. And then there was Becky. She's going to be our new registrar, or is our new registrar. And then Hallie is with the finance team. That's our admin team. And then this is our learning coaches. And they are fully invested in your children. They love what they do. And they are amazing at inspiring your children to learn academically and spiritually. And then the instructional designers are also on here. Oh, are any learning coaches in here? Nope. Instructional designers, any in here? They're in the back. What they do is no small task. So we use Canvas, which is the learning management system, where the students go to access the lesson. And it's like a canvas when they get there, and they make the lessons look beautiful, full of videos and content to teach the children and make it as exciting as school can be. This will be our 3rd year. The 22-23 school year is our 3rd year for the middle and high online. And each year we learn. The families give us feedback, and so we're trying to get better and make this an excellent educational experience for your children, something that they'll love to do and remember. We also use the 4R'ing system, the research, reason, relate, record, and the FACE principles, which is the founding of American Christian education. And then, so what a day might look like for a child if they were in the online school. They'd first go to the learning management system, Canvas, go to their first course that they want to study, and they'll have these beautiful videos there and maybe some content to read. Then they do their assignment. They complete this independent study before they actually go to the live class. This gives the learning coach time to read the assignments and go over them and see if they might have missed something or they need to add something, be prepared to answer some questions. And then about 3 days later, they go to the live class. So they would,
if somebody is full-time with us, if you have a full-time student with us, then they meet 1 hour for each of those classes a week. In a class, online, we use Zoom with classmates. Or they can take just a few classes if that fits your family better. Your child can sign up to take just 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 classes for credit and not full-time. We have the live classes that they can go along with the students who are following a schedule and finishing in terms and getting report cards on a schedule, or we have a la carte where you can choose your courses and do it at your own pace. And these are the schedules. I'm going to just kind of skip them for a moment so that we can give you a look inside of the home that is using AHS Online, or that did last week. Oh, how do I stop it, Peter? We just need this sound on.
Been the perfect middle ground.
All right, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed last week's reading.
We're welcome, everybody. Let's have our opening prayer.
Well, scholars, welcome back to American Heritage History.
We have loved having our daughter with American Heritage Online. It has been the perfect middle ground for what we were looking for. Having a live teacher is immensely helpful because I am able to ask them questions and they are able to ask me questions. That she has interaction with a live teacher and live classmates. Having live classmates is fun because you can actually talk to each other and you can chat with each other and you can discuss topics that we are learning in class. We noticed a light come back into her as she started with American Heritage that had been dwindling before. Being able to express my faith and my testimony and being able to hear my classmates and my teacher also talking about that. I love when she comes out from class just beaming and excited to share with me the things that she's learning or things that the teachers have shared with her. It helps you to feel that there are other people with you. It's been a great resource for our family. I'm creating a stronger relationship with my family and also strengthening my own character and interests.
10-minute break and come right back. You're wonderful. We love you.
Yeah, it totally is. We didn't mention that every class, whether you're taking at my pace or whether you're in a live class, you have a learning coach that guides, the student has a learning coach that helps guide the student through it and meets with them on a regular basis, one-on-one, through Zoom.
Great. Okay, we have 2 minutes for questions. Well, what an awesome team, huh? Can we just give a huge round of applause? Amazing women. And Nate. Amazing women and Nate. It's an incredible team. None of which were here last year. Well, you were just coming on, huh? Elizabeth has been here for a long time, right? Okay. Yes.
Okay. So my name is
Sherry.
For the if it's parent-led, there still is an opportunity for the child to have this other coach for each subject, 1 hour a week for that subject. So if they're taking 5 subjects, they would have 5 coaches and a classroom. And they talk about what they learned that week, etc.
All the classes are a flipped class, so they learn the content independently, and if they're on LiftEd, they're learning with their study group, right? They're learning with other students, and they finish that learning experience, and then they jump on a class, a live class with other students from around the world on Zoom. That's the same for high school.